Hey everybody, I wanted to let you know something that was going on for Transition Lab, or I guess what Transition Lab is right now. I have a couple stories to tell. The first is that in our backyard, we've torn down our garage and we're rebuilding it. And there's going to be an apartment on top that we're going to rent out. And hopefully we can create some affordable housing. I'll talk about that. But it's also in our backyard, and in the lower level of it, we're going to have a guest bedroom. And then when the garage isn't being used as a garage, hopefully it can be used for other things, community-based things. And you know me, I'll come up with stuff. But most importantly, I wanted to share the story about going to the reservation. And when I told the story to other people recently, it just seems like it needs to be heard and told. And so here it comes again. So about a month after George Floyd's murder, my kids and I were down in Canyon de Chelly with my friend, the Navajo elder Lupita, and um, she had us. She was kind of giving us this tour of this part of the canyon that very few white people have ever been in, and there was this rock wall just covered with petroglyphs. It was so cool. It was like, I don't know, maybe 30 yards wide and 8 feet tall. And I've never seen so many beautiful petroglyphs. There was this red horse that was like, it was wider than my arms. It was just this beautiful painting. And so when we were over there looking at the petroglyphs, um, there were like some that were Anasazi. And Lupita was like, I don't know what these are, probably some happy family portrait. And then there were others that were more, I guess, contemporary, as in the last 1,000 years rather than 2,000 years. And she could read some of them, and she could tell me what was going on with others. And there were two things that struck me, and one of them was that there was no graffiti or any kind of deterioration, any kind of vandalism on this. And I think the reason, because it hadn't really ever been like a tourist place where people could just like show up and stuff. And but there was only one thing on the entire this entire wall that was from a white person, and it was above. So there was this like big, wide, long thing, but then above it there was the carved into the side was the name of a lieutenant and a date, and he had stood on top of his horse to commemorate the day that Kit Carson and the cavalry showed up and killed Lupita's ancestors and burned down the orchard. Um, and I looked at her, and she showed that to me, and I looked at her, and I was just like, "How do you deal with that?" I mean, like that is such a that would be so hard for me to look at every day. Um, and and she said, I was angry about it for a very long time, but in the Navajo way, they teach the beauty way, and that's something I know very little about. But what is true that I think we can all relate to is that when you're angry and out of control, and when you're focused on your anger and vengeance and that kind of stuff, nothing ever. You're not controlled by your own life. You're controlled by your anger. And she's like, I didn't want to live that way, so I had to do so many ceremonies and processes to walk in a beauty way so that that doesn't make me angry. And I thought that that alone was profound. But then she turned to me and she said, those were my ancestors, and those were your ancestors that did that to my ancestors. But that wasn't you, and you didn't do that to me. And that's why you're here now, because we're building this bridge. We're creating healing and reconciliation. And it just blew me away. The everything about that moment, the grace, the forgiveness, the beauty, the the everything. Because, like I said, like George Floyd had just happened, and America is really confronting so many things, And so often, like, I don't unfortunately, I don't see people, like, dealing with those in skilled ways necessarily. And there's also it's so easy to have so much anger because you don't know how to process it. Whereas, like, Lupita has had ceremony to help process and wisdom and things like that, and so have I for that matter. So we were able to, like, make this connection. Um, and so I'm gonna obviously continue to work with Lupita, but then here's kind of like where the things come next. Going back to the garage project, obviously upstairs in this apartment, we're going to be renting it out to a healthcare worker or a teacher or even a police officer, somebody who's in the community really trying to do good things. And we want to create some sort of affordable and sustainable housing for them because that's a huge issue right now in America. But in that lower level, um, when I talked about that guest bedroom, we're gonna make sure we have a toilet and a sink um, and some other just like really basic amenities because Lupita's kids, Chris and Ryan, um, they if you're an Indian in America, Native American, whatever, um, it's really tricky because the reservation is one of the most poor places you'll ever go because there's no economy. And I can just try to explain that for a second here. Even if people want to work, there is no work because nobody has any money to be circulating. Well, why does nobody have any money? Well, because of hundreds of years of colonialism, but kind of like where it comes to like the modern age is on a reservation, all the land is communally owned. So there's not this sense of like private property that we have. But here's where it gets tricky. If you don't have private property, then you don't have any credit with banks. And if you don't have any credit with banks, then you can't loan any money to start a business or to move forward. And so actually, if you go across the reservation, the only buildings that you will see that are kind of like new are basically where trading posts used to be, because they're kind of grandfathered into the reservation system where white people had ownership of those few parcels and they could be sold and bought and developed. But everything else, it literally almost takes an act of Congress to do something. Now, obviously, you can make a hogan on your ancestral lands, and they have their own like communal understanding of who's supposed to live where. But I'm saying all that because if you don't have any quote unquote private property to put up as collateral, then there's no way to take out a loan and get it ahead. And it took me a long time to understand like that that's one of the huge causes. And then on top of that, just add trauma and alcoholism and other symptoms of poverty. And so that's why the res is a mess. And and it gets even trickier because you either have to leave everything behind and go to like Albuquerque and Phoenix, and there you can yeah you can make money and rent a place, but then you get completely isolated from your community, or you stay on the res and you're culturally rich, but you don't have any materialistic way to get forward. And so it's really a double-edged sword because like Ryan and Chris, um, they've left the res and gone and worked, but then what'll happen is like somebody will get sick and they'll have to go back to the res to drive them to the hospital, and then they'll lose their job, and so they're just kind of like stuck all over again. So I'm telling you all of this because that lower bedroom is going to be reserved for Ryan and Chris to come up and to temporarily work in Montrose and have a free place to stay so that they can help get ahead. And I think that that's I mean, I'm not sure even what that relationship is going to look like besides they're my friends and I can't wait to help them out. But the reason I'm sharing that with you right now is when I think about what does some kind of like racial reconciliation look like in our country, it gets so difficult. I mean, I don't even know where to start, but at the same time, I do know where to start, and in a relationship like I've just described, where um, I can help out these people because they're my friends. Yeah, I could rent that room out for Airbnb, and maybe when they're not around, I will. But to me, there's something so important about like offering that to my friends because it's like one small thing that I can do that I have a relationship with that I can offer. And hopefully that can serve as a model of inspiration for others who have available resources like a guest bedroom that they can offer in a positive way to help lift people out of poverty. So, anyway, that's what I'm up to. Hope you're well. Bye.